That was the Soar B minor etude. It's a very famous piece for classical guitarists, and it's a piece that every classical guitarist plays in their late beginner intermediate stage. It's also such a delicate piece. It starts off very, very softly, and it doesn't really go off into very, very high dynamic ranges. The whole thing is very, very soft. Today I want to talk about artistic tuning. How do you tune professionally? How do you make it look like a pro? And there's part of the problem is that if you're playing a very, very soft piece, you cannot tune very, very loudly. Because if you tune very, very loudly before you play in front of, whether it's 5 people or you play in front of a full audience of hundreds, very, very loud tuning can be distracting. Other instrumentalists, like pianists, don't tune their instrument. They walk out, they bow, and then they play the first notes of their piece. And guitarists actually have to check their tuning all the time. You know, our strings tend to be a little bit more unstable than a lot of instruments. So if we have a big temperature change, we have to check the tuning to make sure that we didn't go completely flat. And if you don't check the tuning and you just start playing, a lot of the notes are going to sound really, really sour from the notes going out of tune. So that's no good either. But how do we tune and not distract the audience? That's the question. So with a delicate piece, like this Soar B minor study, if the first notes have a volume like this, our tuning cannot be louder or more intense than that. So you cannot walk out and start tuning like that. That's not going to work. That's instantly going to look and sound very unprofessional. So we have to develop a good tuning system that's very, very quick and one that is ultra quiet. I've seen people sometimes tuning with harmonics, and although that works for some people to tune this way, I think that the bell-like sounds of the harmonics can also be distracting to listeners that are not so familiar with the guitar. You have to understand, there are going to be people, whether it's 5 people in your audience or more, there's a lot of people that don't know a lot about the classical guitar, and they already are thrown off by the fact that you're tuning. So if you do something ultra fancy with harmonic bell-like sounds, that might also throw them off. So I like to always use open strings. I like to do something that's very simple, and I steer everybody away from the 5-5-5-4-5 method of starting on the 5th fret of the 6th string, and then moving on to the next, and then to the next, and then to the next. So 5-5-5, 4th fret, 5th fret, that's a very common way to tune, but it's not ideal because you're using a different reference string every time, and there's a chance that you can have a bit of a chain reaction. You know, you go wrong once and you have to retune the whole set of strings again, and then that's going to take you longer to tune. If it's taking you way too long to tune the instrument, again, it's going to be a distraction. It's going to look unprofessional. So what do? We use a electronic tuner backstage out of view of the audience, and that is to check to make sure that we're playing at the frequency that we want. We want to make sure that our A is A 440 hertz. That's a very typical way to tune the guitar. You may prefer another tuning system, but you want to make sure that you're set to the tuning system that you want exactly. So going forward, it's very important to use your ear. When you're using your ear, you're constantly training your ear and developing your ear. And what can happen is if you use the electronic tuner too much and you rely on it, your ear becomes weaker. And that's not good, because on stage we don't want to put a visible tuner on the guitar. We really don't. We want to do everything very quickly and by ear. Next, you got to have a reliable and quick tuning system. The only way you can have that is by using a single reference pitch. And what I do is tune everything to the open E. I start with the open E very quietly, then I get my E here. Okay, next I'm going to get the E on the 3rd string. And I'm going to get the E on the 4th. Good. I'm going to get the E on the 5th. Very quietly, and then the 2 open E's. Now, you don't want to use a major or minor chord to tune after that. Major and minor intervals are just a little bit out of tune, and we want to use unisons, fifths, and fourths. Those are the perfect intervals. So one really good reliable chord, no matter what key you're playing in, is this chord consisting of only perfect intervals. So I'm going to play the open E. I'm going to use the first finger to bar the B and the E on the 5th and 4th strings. Then I'm going to use the third finger to get the B, 4th fret, 3rd string. I'm going to use the pinky to get the 5th fret on the 2nd string, and then I'm going to use the open high E again. So I play that very softly. And then if I play that very softly, and then I begin the soar piece, you can see it's not such a big distraction. I want to take a moment to talk about the guitar that I've been using in this video. The opening soar piece and the entire demonstration was played on a guitar provided by GEWA Music and Manuel Rodriguez Guitars. This is the Magistral D-C. It's a beautiful instrument, and if you can believe it, it's under $1,000. It's under $1,000 US. It actually retails for 729 euro. That's MSRP. So you can often find it for lower than that. I was on the hunt for an instrument that I could recommend to those that are just beginning with the guitar. They're making their first trek into like kind of a late beginner intermediate repertoire. They're not sure if they want to continue. They're not sure how far they want to take it, but you gotta have an instrument that sings. I mean, you gotta have an instrument that sounds and looks professional. This was a huge problem for me in the beginning because I learned how to play the guitar really quickly, and the instrument I had was, I believe back then it was under about €1,000, and it just like really did not, it didn't work when I would show up to workshops and master classes, and there would be students there that would have $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 instruments, concert instruments. That was kind of the standard. Those instruments, they look different from mine because my instrument had a really glossy kind of unprofessional looking finish, and the sound of my guitar was like really small. It wasn't really warm and inviting. This instrument doesn't have those problems. I would not be embarrassed to hang this instrument next to any expensive instrument that I play. It looks fantastic. It sounds really beautiful, as you could tell in the opening notes of the soar. And it also has a really, really nice armrest on here. I actually put armrests on every guitar that I play, and the reason being is I believe that it promotes a very relaxed contact point with the right arm and right hand. Tension is rarely localized into just one area. It can start in one area, but it always translates to kind of full tension in the whole body. So if we're not relaxed, when we put down our right arm, our left hand can start to get really tense. Our shoulders can start to get really tense. We could start to be really heavy with everything that we play. And having a light touch is extremely important for building virtuosity, for making everything feel easy. I also find that the upper bout of the guitar, if we're not careful with our pressure, the upper edge here can really dig into our forearm here. And it leaves like marks, and potentially, if you do it for too long, it could actually compress nerves in the right hand. So these armrests are very, very important. Guys, that's it for this week's lesson. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.